can about my experiences sort of starting a company that's sort of EA related, the struggles that have sort of we've faced trying to do that, and sort of what you might expect in an experience of sort of trying to start a business in the Netherlands or somewhere else. So to be honest, I haven't really spoken much about my company Deedmob in sort of EA circles, because sometimes I feel like I'm an imposter who will sort of be caught and told how to think correctly or think well. And part of that has sort of come because we've sort of not taken this super focused approach on sort of specializing just for sort of highly effective charities. So sort of 4 years ago, I was finishing my bachelor's in computer science and philosophy, and I was sort of at a crossroads. What do I do with my career? I'd been sort of influenced heavily by EA, but I also wanted to become really good at like engineering, like creating software, because everyone around me was doing that, and I felt like that was how I could like increase my career capital. And I sort of realized that academia wasn't for me, like researching, studying, like I wasn't super engaged with that kind of work, and I was constantly trying to make things. And so what I ended up doing was I sort of met a friend, and he sort of had this idea, sort of like, why are so many young people saying they want to change the world, saying they want purpose in their careers, but so little of them actually are able to do that in their careers. And we saw this as sort of an opportunity to try and sort of bridge the divide between what people were saying and what people were doing. So we sort of went to sort of volunteering ourselves, and we've sort of been lifelong volunteers, and we were sort of examining the experience, sort of why aren't young people volunteering more? And really what we found was like a lot of volunteering isn't really made for young people in their busy lives that are sort of ambitious, that are career driven. And part of that is sort of a lot of organizations sort of have a lot of management overhead of volunteers, and they sort of have expectations, and they want to onboard them and train them. And a lot of volunteers, want a taste of something. They want a social experience where they can make friends, find meaning, and sort of maybe build their skills. So, we were sort of trying to solve that problem. And to be honest, we were kind of, just out of university. We didn't really know the troubles ahead. And sort of what we found is like, it's very hard to change behaviors and sort of to change things. And we really started with a marketplace where we were trying to make it really easy for volunteers to sort of find and sign up to volunteering with like as few clicks as possible. Like it's so easy to get entertainment and content these days, but we were finding it was super hard to like join volunteering. Like we'd have to go on these weird websites, we'd have to send an email to someone. Like even that's scary. Like I don't want to be sending emails to people. I want to be like pressing sign up buttons. So we sort of built this thing. It took us a while. We got sort of venture capital funding from like non-impact investors. And then we sort of started rolling out in the Netherlands. So we got like UNICEF, Red Cross, all the big charities on board. But we also got like lots of small charities. And sort of we were doing this thing, we were sort of trying to get them to sort of create volunteering opportunities and get people to sign up. And we thought that from there, we could sort of start to try and incentivize charities to create more engaging content. Sort of how can we steer them towards creating these better experiences, maybe with sort of like incentives of getting more volunteers, like structuring it in sort of our product. And that was sort of what we're trying to do. And what we found was like, it's really hard to make money off charities doing this. Like charities don't want to pay for volunteers. And they were kind of only using us to get volunteers. And as soon as they had the volunteer, they'd sort of go somewhere else and do something with that volunteer somewhere else. So we started to build into our product like a place for companies to sort of organize their volunteering. And we found that, a lot of big companies do corporate volunteering. And we had sort of a unique position in having like all these charities with all this content. We could sort of create really great volunteering experiences for these companies in that way. what we found is that that was also pretty hard, because it turns out companies care, but like not that much about company volunteering, sort of a nice to have. And that sort of meant that we felt like we didn't have really strong feedback loops. Like the fact that, you know, if we're doing something, we really want them to care about it. And we also felt like we were sort of going off track. Like we didn't start to try and make company volunteering better. We sort of started to try and tackle like volunteering and how we can make it, you know, connect with younger people. So then we started to look at, you know, what else can we work on in this space? Like how can we make progress? Because, you know, we feel like we have a lot of companies going. We have sort of Red Bull, H&M, TomTom, big companies paying us money. But we knew that wasn't really where the problem was and what we were trying to do. So we started to sort of work on sort of giving charities and people who were trying to sort of stimulate volunteering, which we found to be like local governments. We worked on giving them sort of the tech tools we built for ourselves in this marketplace. So we started to build our products so that we could sort of empower these organizations to sort of engage volunteers, sort of use technology, and sort of adopt a workflow and a process that made it easier for them to sort of engage volunteers from sort of the beginning to the end of the sort of volunteer journey. And sort of along the lines of that, sort of we've been growing. You know, we've raised venture capital around it. It's been going fairly well. Like Floris mentioned, we had an initiative called Corona Helpers, which we launched using our product at the beginning of the Corona crisis, and that was great PR for us. So we spoke to the Prime Minister. We got lots of people reaching out and sort of, and I think that's what you see with a lot of sort of crises is people reaching out to try and help. So that sort of helped us tremendously, and we've had a lot of successes along the way. Like we've helped the National Blood Bank in the Netherlands gain 20,000 new blood donors. We've placed around 10,000 other volunteers at other organizations so far. And sort of the you know, from the outside it looks like a success, but in reality, like there's a lot of things that are still very difficult, and you know, we're still figuring out how to grow the company faster, how to sort of make progress faster. And sort of when you join a sort of venture capital way of getting funded, they sort of have an expectation of how fast the company grows, how quickly it gets returns. And sort of as soon as you start to not be on that track, you sort of are starting to think, okay, we need to get profitable. We need to change the way we do things. So that's sort of been our journey. And in terms of like, I guess, entrepreneurship as a sort of career path for me and for maybe other EAs, like there are certain things that I think are really attractive around entrepreneurship that the other roles that are more traditional don't sort of give you. One of them is like you have like great like control over the outcomes and environment that you put yourself in. So if you work in a company, you might sort of be influenced by the company politics or bureaucracy or other people in that company who sort of have bad learning habits or bad decision-making habits, and you're sort of stuck somewhat until you go somewhere else. I feel like in starting a company, you sort of have control over your own outcomes. And that really reflects also in your hard work. So if you're sort of young and in your, you know, in your ambitious years, you sort of want to work hard and you want that hard work to sort of give you something. And, you know, aligning your incentives by creating your own company or working for yourself is a great way to sort of to have skin in the game, whereas at a normal company you might not. The other thing is sort of like, I think there was a talk at the EAJX virtual about long-termist entrepreneurship. I think what you see in entrepreneurship is that like things take longer than you expect them to, but the longer you're in it, the faster it grows in some ways. Like you have great compounding effects of doing something longer and longer. So for instance, like now that we got some press, now, you know, I checked my LinkedIn today, like the deputy mayor of Amsterdam wants to come to our office, and then we'll get some good PR around that. And then we'll send that to our customers, and then they'll talk to their friends, and sort of we can sort of continuously build upon previous wins and sort of what we've been working on. So I think that's really powerful. And then also I think the last thing is like really good counterfactuals. So, you know, if I didn't do it, would someone else do it? I think with entrepreneurship, one of the few things is like, if you didn't do it, someone probably wouldn't do it the same way you do. But there's also things that are really hard. Like it takes really long to make progress. Like I said, you know, we expect to be way further. Motivation can wane from team, from yourself, if you're not making progress according to the way you want it. It's very unstructured. Like traditional companies, you have sort of senior people, mentors that can help you. In your own company, it's, you know, you're kind of by yourself. You're figuring out, who do I learn from? And that's been a learning for me too. Like I haven't been the strongest at figuring out who my mentors are and sort of learning from them. And that just means making mistakes that sort of cost you a lot of time. The other thing I've heard a lot is like, what do I do after that? Like, what if I don't want to start another company? Like, what is my career? So a lot of people sort of fear, sort of, I'm a generalist now. What do I do if I don't want to do startups? Like, what are my career paths? Yeah, and then one thing we've struggled with is sort of, we see ourselves as a social impact startup, but we've always struggled with sort of how do we balance revenue and impact? And it's really hard to optimize for two different metrics, and sort of consider everything at the same time. So sort of our strategy, and this is probably why I feel like an EA imposter, is sort of like, let's worry about revenue. And when we become in a position where we sort of have a network effects, sort of monopoly position, we can start to sort of funnel volunteers towards more effective causes, or sort of focus on sort of the impact side of things. But very early in a startup's life, it feels like you have to make sure that it survives and sort of gets to sort of a breakaway velocity where it's relevant and it won't just die by itself. And then I guess the last thing I want to say is like, you know, like I feel like in charities, and people I've spoken to who work in charities or have started charities, you spend a lot of your time sort of dependent on fundraising and donors. And I've seen that also in startups. Like you spend a lot of your time distracted by government grants, changing your vision to fit what investors want from you. So I see a lot of parallels there. Anyway, that's sort of my experiences with sort of effective altruism in my career and sort of entrepreneurship. And I'm very happy to chat with anyone who's sort of considering it or interested. I guess just message me or reach out to me. Yeah, I'm very happy to sort of find out what you guys are up to. I guess that's the end of my my talk, right? I think now it's time for questions.
Yes, perfect. So Lauren, if you can unmute yourself, then you can ask the questions. Thank you very much, David. It was a great talk, very informative.
Yes, I think first question comes from, let me quickly check. From Gerda. Maybe you want to ask the question yourself, Gerda. Then I'll mute myself.
I was wondering how exactly corporate volunteering looks like. Like, what do they employ volunteers for? Okay, yeah. Sorry, I presume knowledge of that term. My mistake. Essentially, corporate volunteering is mainly sort of multinational companies, big companies, H&M, Red Bull, those kinds of companies, who want to engage their employees with volunteering at local charities, usually as part of their sort of CSR initiatives. And they usually want to do this in order to sort of align employees with their values, sort of engage them in sort of social good. Volunteering also has like benefits around mental health and others. So companies sort of use our services to help them engage more of their workforce with CSR volunteering. So for instance, like a company like Atlassian will have 40 hours per year for employees to take paid volunteering time.
and oftentimes sort of it isn't utilized effectively. So like, 15% of that time is actually used. So we sort of help the companies sort of increase engagement with these programs.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Cool.
I think there was a second question from Aditya. Maybe you can also ask it yourself.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm interested in entrepreneurship myself, and one of the worries that I have is that, early on when I'm trying to raise money, I have to sell equity, right, in the company to pay for stuff, to pay for costs, and then over the long term, I might lose control of the long term culture or vision of the company. So I wanted to ask, what are some strategies that we can use to raise money while still sort of retaining control of the vision? And what do you think of raising debt rather than selling equity?
Yeah. So I would say that I think that like culture and vision are sort of controlled by the leaders in the company. So, the executive team, which is usually the founders. As a founder, you can lose control of your company if you agree to terms with investors where they can fire you, essentially. One way to do this is sort of losing majority in voting. You typically won't do this early stage in a company. You might have to do this if you're in a really bad position, but typically only companies that have received like significant follow-on funding, like Series B, Series C, might be in this position. So I would say it's not a worry early on, because you sort of have total control. Even though you've given an investor maybe like 10%, 20% of the company, they can sort of kick you out or tell your employees or your team. But yeah, culture can sort of be formed without you intending it to be formed that way. So it's a tricky thing to figure out. In terms of raising debt, I've heard that it's pretty dangerous. We took a loan from one of our investors because we didn't want to raise money at some point. And that's an option, but it has more risks involved, I would say. So yeah, I think the typical thing is to sell equity early on, and I would suggest not selling too much. That's a learning for sure.
Yeah. Thanks.
All right, David, thank you so much. I see that there are some more questions. So I don't know if you'll stick around for the hangout, but if someone has a burning question, you can ask David yourself, or maybe I or Jan-Willem, our next speaker, are also somewhat skilled in entrepreneurship, but also feel like imposters a lot of the time, I think. Can maybe answer them also. So Jan-Willem, I would like to give the floor to you. And so Jan-Willem is one of the leaders of Effective Altruism Netherlands.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Floris, for the invitation to talk here. And I will tell something about Effective Altruism Netherlands strategy and activities. And there will be many opportunities for volunteering. That's something I can tell you already. So yeah, please let me know after the talk if there's anything that you like. I will put my email in the chat. So if there's anything that you're interested in, please let me know. So my name is Jan-Willem van Putten. Just started as managing director, forming the management team together with Marike, who's also here, who is the operations director. Yeah, short background, studied economics and law. I worked as a strategy consultant for 3 years at OCNC here in Rotterdam. After that, was an entrepreneur for 3 years, worked in education, management information systems for schools. It's really easy. And I missed the impact working in my own company, because I felt that we made very nice dashboards and stuff for schools, but at the end, what are you really doing? I mean, at the end of the day, you make Dutch schools maybe a little bit better. What's the impact of that on a world scale? An effective altruist would say too small. So I quit last April and started as managing director. So what I will tell is a bit about the things that we're doing. We just finished a strategy project, internal strategy project, to see what we should do in the next year. We're also currently in a funding process of Center for Effective Altruism, who is able to provide funding to local groups. Yes, I'm very happy. So I think I will just have 15 minutes. I'm very happy to answer some questions after this. So I would say our strategy, or maybe good to tell first, is that we have an organization with a management team, like I told you, Marieke and I. On top of that, we have a board with 3 members. And below that, we have a lot of voluntary project managers and people who work in projects with project managers. So that's our structure. Our strategy has, I would say, 3 pillars. The first one is to professionalize and extend our current core group activities. So the things that all national chapters, when you speak to other national chapters from Germany or Denmark or Sweden, what they do. One of them being to giving career coaching, one-on-one career coaching, and high-level decision-making. So more general advice on decisions you make in life from an EA perspective. So how that works is that you can apply for that. So you can send me an email, like I said, and we can give you career coaching. If you are early in your career, it will be more focused around the studies that you could do, but also to think more broadly. So what course areas are you interested in? What are the steps to go in a certain direction? What are the most impactful organizations in the Netherlands? But also what are the EA-related organizations? So, for example, in animal welfare, we have ProVeg. We will hear Nicoll after this talk. So, yeah, that's one thing we do. And what we want to do is further professionalize it by doing research on a local market and doing this better. The second point is we're currently in the process of renewing our website to make it a bit more user-friendly, but also to put some more information on it. Here we are really looking for people who could help us out. So if you have some knowledge about effective altruism and you feel that you have above average writing skills and you have some spare time left, this is definitely something you could help us with. Third one is that we try to collect local job opportunities. So it is kind of connecting to career coaching. So in order to give good career coaching, we try to collect impactful positions and also EA-related positions. So that's also something we are always looking for people who are on the lookout. Maybe some people are in the process of getting a new job, looking for a job that is impactful. If you think that you find a nice vacancy that suits this description, you can always send it to me. So that's also a way to help us. Further, we organize events as well. So something that Floor is doing in Rotterdam, something we do as well. We organize EA cafes, which go sometimes quite in depth into a certain topic like AI or biorisk or another one. We have a yearly event celebrating progress, several other meetups, and good to know is that we are always looking for people who like to organize events, who have organizational skills and like to do it. So that's also an opportunity to help. And also fun to attend. So that was the first pillar. I would say those are the core activities of every national group. And the second pillar is more about projects that we currently do. And I think the most important to mention here is doneereffectief.nl. I will write the URL down for you so you can visit it after the session, which is a website where you can find all the best organizations to donate to in different cause areas. So donations to global health and global development, but also climate change, but also animal welfare. So we collected data from GiveWell and Founders Pledge and some different organizations within Effective Altruism. It's a website in Dutch, and that's something I have to tell you since there are quite some English speakers here. it's focused mainly on, I would say, people maybe 50 years, 40 years or older in the Netherlands who don't speak English that well, but who want to give to effective causes. The website is built by one of our voluntary project managers, Andrea. She's a lady, retired now, and yeah, she had this question like, okay, I want to give my money away to an effective cause. It was very hard to find for her. She saw some websites in English like GiveWell, but for her it was a bit tough, and she thought there should be a Dutch website with this topic. So yeah, we're currently in the process finishing this. I think we don't need a lot of help with it, but it is a way, of course, to help to help the cause of effective altruism. Maybe you want to donate some money. Maybe you want to support a specific cause area with your money. Then Doneer Effectief could be a good place to start for you. And what we also did is that at Doneer Effectief, there are a lot of charities in the Netherlands. Some charities have a status of tax deductibility. So we helped a lot of these effective EA organizations to get this status. Because then, yeah, of course, way more people will donate. That's something we just finished. And what's new in our strategy plan is that we started, and that's the third pillar, we will start a few new projects. And I think there we are always looking for people. So where we started is to think about the comparative advantages that we have in the Netherlands. So what are the cause areas where we could add the most value as Dutch group? And first one that came out is that we talked quite some with ProVeg, with Good Food Institute, with ACE, animal charity evaluators, about animal welfare. Probably you know, in the Netherlands we have a very large agricultural sector. We still have a lot of factory farming in the south of the Netherlands. And we also have the University of Wageningen, I think, where a lot of important research happens when it comes to meat substitutes, plant-based food. So yeah, what we spoke about was that it's good to start a local chapter. I think Aditya is here. I spoke with him. He will, if you want to help and start a local chapter in Wageningen, he's the one to talk to now. He has plans to start a local chapter there on all these important topics that are researched in Wageningen. So animal welfare, clean meat, but also maybe some biorisks. So that's also a project that we're starting. So sometimes we help local groups like Wageningen to start up to have certain materials in general. A second project that we will start is a project where we focus on civil servants, Dutch civil servants to start with, to make them more EA aligned. And how we want to do that is by giving workshops. Think about teams like improved decision making, focus more on the long term, and other stuff that will be in this workshop. It will be given, I think, next year. Also here, if you are a civil servant in the Netherlands and you'd like to help us with giving these workshops or by shaping these workshops and finding the right materials, I'm very glad if you could help us. Probably in the future we will also do it on a European level. Last but not least, we will start a program, and that's more in line with what David already told us. So I come from a corporate background as well, and what I also saw was that there's a lot of voluntary time spent by companies on planting trees and playing bingo with the elderly. I mean, which is nice, but it's not that effective. So we also want to start a project, or that is started currently, where we look to and talk to CSR managers to see if we can make them more EA aligned, to let companies like Deloitte start projects on EA stuff to help other organizations with volunteers, EA organizations. So that's also something I'm talking about with David at the moment. I think that's it for now. Is that right in time, Floris, or was too long? Floris?
Also, I think something is happening to your microphone right now. We can still not hear you. I would suggest, first of all, I think he wants to say that thank you for your talk, Jan-Willem.
Yeah,
there's a couple of questions from the chat. First one actually comes from Floris, seeing that his voice is not really, or the microphone seems not to be working. But I think it's a question that might be interesting for a lot of people, especially as there's still a lot of people in the call right now that are relatively in the beginning of their career. And the question is, where do you see the biggest talent gap in the Netherlands? Are there a lot of vacancies in a specific area that would be good to point your career towards?
Yeah, so what I see is that quite some money now is invested in Amsterdam in AI. So there are some big funds there, and so quite often I see vacancies coming up in this space in Amsterdam currently. So that's a very promising field, and of course a very, very important cause area. I mean, probably a lot of you have read Toby Ort's book, The Precipice, one of the biggest existential risks, or the biggest according to him. So I think a very interesting field. Another one I feel that we, at least at Effective Altruism Netherlands, I didn't speak about it to a lot of people, is biorisks, which is kind of interesting. I think it's very important. There are a lot of places in the Netherlands where there is research on biorisks in Wageningen, but also in Leiden. You have the Bioscience Park there, where they have nice research positions and stuff like that. So I would also feel that if you are interested in that, it would be very interesting to speak, because I didn't meet a lot of people within the EA community in the Netherlands who have a background on biorisks. I think those two areas spring to mind, but maybe I forget some, and I will post it after the session.
Great. The second question, I would say we take again 2 questions. It comes from Yoni, and is about, do you know if there is a place where you can find more information about CSR opportunities for companies? Is this like directly in line with what David just presented, or how does the Effective Altruism Netherlands work with CSR opportunities?
Yeah, so it is in line. So to be honest, we just started the project. So we're currently doing some research and planning some talks with CSR managers in the Netherlands to see if we can redirect, if there is a possibility to redirect some of the work to more effective causes. And after that, if there is, we want to collect a lot of voluntary job opportunities from effective causes like ProVeg. I received an email from ProVeg, I think last month, that they were looking for people with a financial and a legal background for a voluntary question, or to work as a volunteer. That's something, I mean, if we have a network of a few companies, legal companies, accounting firms, consulting firms, we could easily ask these questions in our network, spread it in our network, and make the connection between the company and the effective organization. So that's how we would love to work in the future. But we just started on this project. So it's not yet possible.
Yeah, I was just seeing, actually, there is still one follow-up question. Can people contact you after this, Jan-Willem? Because I think someone might want to already redirect their CSR manager to you.
So to be honest, I have to leave at 20:30. But people, I will write my email down. People can just send me an email, and I can easily plan a one-on-one, or just ask a question by email if it's just one question. So that works for me.
Yes, perfect. Thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Then it works again. So thank you very much, Jan-Willem. So now we go to Nicoll, and she'll tell us about the work ProVeg is doing. So Nicoll, the floor is yours.
Thanks. Yeah, it's really nice to be here. I see some familiar faces and a lot of unfamiliar faces. Maybe start with a small introduction as well. My name is Nicoll Peracha. I am in charge, I'd say, of the inside of ProVeg Netherlands. So I'm mainly concerned myself with finances, office, people, organizational development. I've been involved with what is now ProVeg Netherlands since 2016. And I've done a lot of different things. I have a very general background and I tend to do whatever is necessary. So I started as a volunteer manager and organizing events, and that grew into a lot of other things. Let's say for myself, my main mission in life is to leave the world a better place than when I was born. I'm turning 50 this year, which means that I'm a bit in a hurry. I started working mainly for human causes. I've worked in medical and humanitarian advocacy for Doctors Without Borders. I've been a legal advisor. I've been a manager in children protection services. And when I learned more about how we treat animals, particularly in factory farming, I realized that there was something wrong that was more than just the way we treat animals. I've seen and experienced really horrible things that humans can do to each other when working abroad. Also when working in the Netherlands with the children protection services. And then I realized that for humans, we have laws, we have prevention, we have international treaties, we have all kinds of institutions, people, and a lot of money dedicated to trying to prevent and solve when we humans treat each other in a horrible way. And when it comes to animals, we hardly do. We have some for animal welfare, but that's very, very basic. And you can even turn it around, and that's when you go into factory farming, you actually get subsidies, you get extra money from the government. For a way of treating animals that is at least as horrible as sometimes people treat each other. And that was when I switched careers and decided to dedicate my time to working towards a better life for animals. It took me a little while to find my place, which I think a lot of people here are searching for. Which organization would I like to join? What can I do? What is most effective? I've always said you can only spend your time and your money once. So I try to make the best of it. And I'm very happy that by then I discovered the organization Viva Las Vegas. Viva Las Vegas was founded in 2011 by 3 students. Worked for animal welfare, but from a very specific perspective, and that's trying to inspire people to eat less animal products as a way of making sure that we need less animals, and the way that we start thinking about animals changes as well. They developed the organization step by step, starting with consumer programs, the Veg Challenge, a huge campaign by now, organizing events. But also what really inspired me is my first talk with Vela and Pablo back in 2016 is the same idea that I have. We have to do it in a way that we are effective. We cannot work, of course we have our principles, we know why and what and how we want to change the world, but the main thing is within ethical boundaries to have a pragmatic approach and to have an approach that actually is effective, that we do create that change. And in order to know whether or not we are effective, we need to measure. We need to measure not only our output, but also our impact. And we also discovered that it's incredibly difficult to measure, but just the fact that we're trying and that we do as much as we can, and the huge ambition that that we have to change the world. I will show you some slides later on. That is what resonated with me, and that's why I joined then Viva Las Vegas. In 2018, we became part of the international organization ProVeg International, and we also changed our name to ProVeg International, and then being the Dutch brands being ProVeg Netherlands. We started growing from being a completely volunteer-run organization. We realized that in order to make sure that we had continuity within the team and that we could have people within the team that could work more than, well, the maximum usually is 8 hours a week if you have a job on the side, or maybe 3 months in between jobs. We needed more than that. Is we started with paid jobs in a combination of volunteers and interns as well. And by now, actually, we also have some company volunteering, so we're really happy with that. So this is, I think, a good moment to switch to some slides. I will keep it short. I can't share my screen myself, I see. Yuri, can you maybe show the slides, or can you authorize me to show them? It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Yes, so that should be me. Share screen. Share. Can you share now?
Let's try. I think I can. That's nice. Okay, I think you can see my screen now. It's loading. Yes, right? Okay, so now we are perfect. We are part of an international organization, which in our definition is an international food awareness organization working towards transforming the global food system. And how we do it is by replacing conventional animal products with plant-based and cultivated alternatives. So also meat and milk and other alternatives being grown in laboratories. And in order to do that, we try to work together with as many organizations and institutions as we can. We partner up and we provide knowledge and inspiration and tools, very practical tools for them to achieve their goals, as long as their goals align with ours. So that's also in trying to find a more effective way of working, not doing everything ourselves, but aligning with other organizations. Our mission, we want to reduce global animal production and consumption by 50% by the year 2040. In itself, that is already quite ambitious. It can be achieved. There are different ways of calculating. It depends on a lot of different factors. For the Netherlands, it would actually mean a reduction by something like 80–85% compared to the consumption pattern that we have now. And that is if we want to have a similar consumption pattern all throughout the world, because there are still a lot of countries that eat a lot less animal products than we do. So for the Netherlands, that's quite a lot. And then looking beyond 2040, it might actually be reduced further, but let's take it step by step. This is a huge step already. Then we said, okay, how to do that? We want people to reduce eating animal products. People have different reasons for wanting to do that. The common goal is, or the common denominator is taste. If something doesn't taste nice, people won't eat it. So in order for people to change their habits, you need to make sure that you can, you have substitutes that are at least as, sorry, there's a lot of noise on my side, at least as nice as the animal counterpart. And then you go to the motivations. It's usually health. pro-justice, which is, for example, the way food is divided across the globe, the fact that we use a lot of land to grow soy for animal feed that has huge repercussions in other parts of the world. So it's to do with justice. It's of course for the animals themselves and for the environment, climate change, and don't have to say anything about that. So we try to align with people's motivations, and it doesn't matter which motivation you have. It doesn't matter from which starting point you have. We also say every step counts. Whether you stop eating red meat, as long as you don't replace it with something else animal-wise, or start drinking plant-based milk, which is quite common by now. Every step counts. And then step by step trying to reach our mission. So in a sense, we say we're like the Swiss Army knife of NGOs, with the different causes that or reasons that we address, and the different cause areas actually as well. It's not only pro-animals, although for many of us within the organization, it's the primary motivation, not for everybody. Also for everybody who cannot choose. If you cannot choose between cause areas, animals, environment, justice, or health causes, choose plant-based and you will address 4 cause areas at the same time. By now, ProVeg International indeed is quite international. We have several branches in Europe, but as we clearly see that it's other areas in the world which are still emerging economies where animal consumption, the consumption of animal products is increasing quite quicker than we can ever decrease in Europe. We're also trying to expand to specific countries like India, China, and South Africa, and the US for different reasons again, to make sure that we have a global impact. Europe is like the stepping stone and sometimes also an incubator. We test programs and campaigns here, and then we export it to other countries, of course, with a lot of cultural differences. But this is now ProVeg International and still expanding. This is again to show alignment. We try to also on an international level work together with other organizations that have at least partially similar goals as we do. And then we say, okay, we walk alongside you as long as we have a shared goal. And the moment you achieve your goal and we might want to go further, that's fine. Then we will continue the journey. But for now, as we want the same thing, let's work together. That's the 50 by 40 Alliance. I will quickly tell you a little bit about some of the projects and campaigns that we are running internationally or nationally. This is an important one, the ProVeg Incubator, which helps startups with innovative and disrupting actually replacements. Usually it's replacements for animal products to get a good start. With a mentoring program, with financial support, linking them to investors, quite an intense program of, I think it's 8 weeks by now. Third batch of startups is starting, I think, within a few weeks. So that's running quite well. It's run from the Berlin office, but there is, it is open for Dutch companies as well. And Dutch companies do participate. So that's really, really nice. Then, of course, the one-on-one replacements. We work with retail, with supermarkets, inspiring them to change whatever they serve and sell. And in itself, that seems like it's a little bit less effective because you have this one-on-one relationship. So what we've seen 2 things that actually convinced us that there is real impact to be made, and that's on the one hand, that once a company changes one product, a lot of times they take a second and a third step by themselves. For example, Yoma, we helped develop one vegan salad that is in the supermarkets now, and the two that follow, they develop themselves. So that's one. And the second part here is that we have a lot of opportunity to create interest in these products. By now, for the Netherlands, for example, we have a good mailing list. We send out information, and we are probably going to host our own webinar soon, just spreading information and helping on a larger scale retailers and companies to change. So it's growing from working one-on-one offline. We now also work a lot more online and reaching bigger audiences. There's of course the trade fairs, particularly on an international level. That's very interesting. The ingredients, but also other fairs. For the Netherlands, a little bit less. We have one consumer fair, but definitely on an international level, that's quite impactful. And then of course, what we see coming up more and more is political engagement. We have been active within the UN for some time now and getting more and more foot in between the door. I'd like to say we're not there yet. This month, we will launch a small campaign about the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, and the relations it has with how we treat animals, not only factory farming, which is a risk in itself, but also living closer to animals, expanding into their habitats. And this campaign will probably mostly take place behind closed doors, so talking one-on-one with politicians and decision makers. Some of it might be public. And then particularly political engagement from the Netherlands. Why is it important? It has already been said a little bit, because the Netherlands has a huge agricultural factory farming part. Even on a global scale, I think we are second in the world in factory farming, and that's huge. So we would like to influence not just the Netherlands, but also European Union on European level. And have seen in the past that the Netherlands has influence there, particularly because we have such huge industry of factory farming. So that's why we also, not only on European level and on UN level, we want to do political engagement, but definitely also within the Netherlands. So that's going, yes.
So we're out of time now.
Yeah. I think this is the final one. Yeah.
All right.
So the last campaign, consumer campaign, also expanded internationally for more impact. This is it. So, yeah, sorry for running out of time.
No problem. I think this is a good way to end and to see what people can do themselves. So Laura, if you would maybe ask one question, and then for everyone, I'll put into the chat where we can go after this. It will be our social hangouts, and will be a public square or digitally. Think Pokemon blue or red, but then you can also chat. So hope to see everyone there, and the instructions will be in the chat. So Lauren, if you can ask one question.
Yes, so thanks to Yoni for sharing that question. I think it's quite interesting to better understand how you measure the added value to the global reduction of meat consumption within the ProVeg organization. Can you give us some more context on how you view this?
Sorry, say again how we measure?
The kind of the added value to the global reduction of meat consumption. So how do you measure like the impact that ProVeg has towards like the meat consumption? Because I imagine it's really hard to measure, right?
It is. There are some projects or campaigns that are a little bit easier to measure, and the one that I think we are furthest with is the Veggie Challenge campaign, which is a consumer campaign in which people that enter get 30-day support to change the way they eat. By monitoring and asking questions before people engage in the challenge and afterwards, we can more or less accurately measure what their diet change has been. And then 3 to 6 months after the challenge, we approach them again and ask them the same type of questions to see if they maintain their diet change. We are in the process of even getting better at this. So there are different ways of measuring, but this gives us an indication of the impact that it has for one person to change their diet or for 250,000 people to change their diet. And that, of course, you can calculate the impact on animal lives saved, but also on water saved, greenhouse gas emissions, that kind of things. For other projects and campaigns that we have, it is a bit more difficult, particularly for political engagement. It's more difficult to measure because the cause and effect, what did we do and what did other people do? So can we even say that we had impact? We did. A lot of times you don't even know. I only know one example that we could really literally see the wordings that we used in our lobby documents, and then the ministry had used the exact same words. So then we knew that at least we had some effect, but otherwise it's almost impossible to measure. But we are working with international organizations who try to develop better measurement systems, inputting data that we have, participating in research projects. So it's getting better and better, but it's not an easy task.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Floris, have you already shared the link and kind of the instructions?
Yes, so you can just follow the link and join there. And then just gather in groups of 2, 3, 4 people. It should be a directional chat, so you can point your saying Pokemon character yourself towards others, and then continue discussing what you've heard, what your thoughts are. Yeah, I think then it rests upon me to thank all of the speakers tonight. It was really great hearing what you're doing, and hopefully you can be, or at least for me, you've been great examples of people working within effective altruism in different ways. And hopefully it's inspiring for others to also take action. I think a lot of people here tonight are looking like, what's the next thing I can do? I think it's a big question within effective altruism, always to how can we do the most good, or how can we do good better? I think you all answered that in a very, very good way. So thank you again. And I will see everyone who wants to join in the High Fidelity. So I will put that here. Yeah, and have a great evening for everyone. I'm stopping the recording.